So what happened for me was that I was like doing a lot of development in like Claude Code or Cursor, and I was mind blown by the productivity, but I kept losing things. And kept like having my agents basically, anytime I was running multiple things at a time, they would trip up over each other, especially working in the same, dev environment. Just so many problems. Like, once a week, like one day a week, I was just fixing problems that I had created from this, right? And having to rebuild or refactor and try new things. And so finally, what happened is like once I moved to the terminal environment and realized, wait a second, with a little bit of work, I could just create my own framework for durability so I never lose these agents. And I just started moving deeper into that and creating the surface and exploring the tabs. So this came from Wave Terminal, and I just forked that and really like benefited from all of their like, UI stuff. Right? So did I build all this? No. But it's a fork of Wave Terminal, and I just added this kind of binding process and a few other like the binding process and the thinking, right, state monitoring, and those two things, added to fork to the fork of Wave Terminal. Just basically, it just took everything to the next level in terms of productivity. Not just so much speed, but like the reliability of my process. So I'm gonna bump over here to like Marnie, and this is like where I do most of my daily work, right? And it actually has there's a setup, some important setup understanding. So on the left is basically the session, which is bound to Marnie, and this is Marnie's tab, right? So this construct gives me the idea of like sort of a let's call it an agent harness or agent like building environment that has a codex session. You can change which kind of thinking you want to use. I mean, this doesn't have to be codex. Like this model really works for any kind of coding architecture. I just kind of built more around codex, but the approach doesn't matter. Claude Code. I'm sure there's like Quen or Kimi, all these different things. They'll all work this way. So knowledge. And what makes that happen primarily is this meta that gets bound. So there's a process here where you can, once you start a session in Codex, I just say, hey, bind this tab here, right? And it creates this contact, this binding. And this is the most important thing, is that you get this codex resume. So like if your machine terminates or you have to terminate the shell application, you don't want to lose anything early on. And this is one of the huge problems that you have, with like, to me, using just like Claude Code or some of the IDEs, is like you get these agents that are semi-permanent, right? They hang around for a while, but you don't really know what's going on with them. This is really a different mindset, right? It's like, okay, these are really like structured agents, essentially, we'll call them. And, Marnie, and she's been like, this is the same agent session. Like, what is an agent? It's the session that you care about and all the data and information that goes along with that session and the ability to restore the session. And once you have that and you realize, and so that happens, is it starts to build the understanding and the context. I mean, is it perfect? No, but it's astronomically better than the approaches I was using here. And so let me just talk a little bit about like, okay, what is session terminal? And like, okay, what's the key thing? So if you saw in the product demo, the tabs at the top, the idea there is that these are durable things. These are tabs like 5 years from now, I could be still running the same session, right? It's the same body of knowledge. I'm sure I'll be doing things to clean it up and optimize it and other things, but that kind of durability is what gives life to an agent. Having the visible status, I actually didn't really show that in the demo. And so Friday's running that. And really what I wanted to show you is this circle here. So what happens is when the agent is thinking, the circle's going. So like, hey, I can just like let that run. And this is a key to getting like 4 or 5 sessions running at a time, is being able to understand what's happening with each session. I put a lot of work into how you bind codecs to this. or basically making a feature available in sessions so that there's a framework for basically keeping this information up to date with what's happening with the agent. And then when it's done, it's going to give me a yellow bell. And that way I know I need to pop in for attention. Everybody. The key is that like it's session, right? And what was the challenge? Like what was the problem, right? Was that I was running a lot of like agents, but like having some kind of mental framework and durability, like constantly I would lose things. I would have things tripping up over each other. And once I basically moved to this state, you're like, okay, I never lose my thread, right? And I know what's going on all the time. So this is really the key to